Good evening, everyone. My name is Connor Moran. I'm the director of the Wisconsin Book Festival. Thank you so much for joining us to celebrate Mirin Fader and her book, Giannis. I think it's really wonderful all the time when we get a great book with a Wisconsin connection, but this one, like, literally, if you're here tonight, you know what it's about. So that's really fun for me. We are also joined by Lori Nickel of the Milwaukee Journal. Lori, Mirin, thank you for joining us tonight. I think this is going to be a great conversation, and it's so great because maybe if you've read the book, you know this, but Lori also appears in the book. So it's like we get a character and we get the author. It's super fun. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you to Madison Public Library, the Madison Public Library Foundation, and all of the sponsors who have made the Wisconsin Book Festival such an essential part of what it means to live in Madison, what it means to live in Wisconsin, and for their steadfast support of free cultural events, not only for the last 9 years. The festival has been housed at Madison Public Library, but particularly over the course of the pandemic. This is our 105th online event, and it really couldn't have happened without them. So thank you to them. We do have 2 events next week. Please check wisconsinbookfestival.org for those final virtual events of the year. And I'm going to step away and let Lori and Mirin take it away. Thank you so much. I'll see you at the end.
Thanks, Connor. Hey, Mirin.
Lori, so great to see you.
Great to see your smiling face in sunny LA. Congratulations on the book, Giannis, The Improbable Rise of an NBA MVP. It was released in August, I believe, around August 10th. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. It's a 400-page biography of the Milwaukee Bucks 9-year veteran. He's just 26 years old. He overcame poverty, immigration, racism, to be a 2-time MVP, a one-time NBA Finals MVP, and now an NBA championship winner. I am going to ask you a few questions, but if there's anybody here who has questions for Mirin, who wrote this incredible book, please throw them in the chat and we would love to hear from you. But my first question is really easy, Mirin. What gave you this idea to write this book?
Yeah, I mean, I did a story on Giannis and his youngest brother, Alex, for Bleacher Report, where I previously worked. And even though it was supposed to be about Alex, Giannis just happened to be there. And the more that I observed both of them together, I was just like, I think this is revealing much more about Giannis than Alex. Maybe the profile should shift, it just changes. And I really wanted to do a book, and I just thought Giannis's story is so interesting. And how is he this amazing and this famous? And we really don't know much about his backstory at all. So I just thought it would be perfect to kind of learn more.
You climbed all the way to number 3, I think, on the New York Times bestseller list for nonfiction, or did it go higher?
It was at number 3.
Yeah, awesome. Do you know how many weeks that you were on that list?
Just the 1 week. 1 week that I will literally never forget.
Tell me about that. What's it like to have a New York Times bestseller?
I mean, first of all, I'm just so grateful for all the people that spoke with me for the book, including you. Like, how wonderful to have you in there. It was just surreal. We knew when the list was coming out, and I actually didn't think I was going to make it. I was like preparing myself to be disappointed because I was just thinking like, oh, there's no way they'll put a sports book. There's so many political books. And when it happened, I was thrilled. My lifelong dream has to become an author and a sports writer. And it's unbelievable. I still can't believe it.
It's a great achievement and accomplishment. This is your first book, right? The first one you've ever written? Okay.
Yeah, ever.
Now, you and I talked a little bit for a story, a little review that I did, like August 3rd, I believe. I got a little bit of a preview. And you really, if people don't know, books are very hard.
Yes.
Right? That's your baby. That's your child, right?
It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
And what I remember off the top of my head, you faced some challenges beyond the difficulty of just writing a book. I believe your trip to Greece was canceled because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
You had some language issues where you speak English and a lot of your sources speak Greek and maybe English as a second language. So there was a challenge there. Your access was somewhat limited. You didn't get to live with Giannis for 2 weeks to get him to tell you your story. And then I think you had a deadline on top of everything else as the Bucks were pushing and it was becoming clear that, so am I missing any challenges there other than are those the big ones?
I was gonna say, I think and just being a first-time author, not knowing how to organize or structure this thing, but yeah, what an eventful pandemic that was.
I mean, any one of those would have stopped me, especially like not being able to go to Greece, because you wouldn't know it from the book. From the book, it's so detailed. It sounds like that you went there. And obviously, how many sources were you up to? How many people did you interview?
221.
221 people?
Yeah.
That's incredible. What was the biggest challenge, though, where you really had to dig deep and either ask for advice or go back? That's the other thing about writing a book. You don't just write the copy once and turn it over to an editor, you're rewriting. So what was the biggest challenge for you being a first-time author?
I've got to say it's not being able to go to Greece, because the focus really, like where I had hoped this book would shine, was in the childhood section. And, we don't even get to the NBA until like page 150 or something. So, it's like that's a lot of pages to make up ground for in a place that you're not at. So, I hired a researcher on the ground to like send me photos and videos and just really pressing people that live there, that breathe that air, that see the sights, what was around him. And you're testing people's memory, because remembering what Giannis's house looked like 10 years ago is not as fresh for some people. So it's almost like the biggest challenge ever, right? Like recreating all the sensory details, because you want your reader to essentially walk with you through the streets of Sepolia.
Right. And you know how you want to do certain things. How did you find a researcher that you could trust?
It's so random. First, the Greek journalists were so helpful and they steered me. Yeah. And, and it's kind of like me meeting you, like you were just so nice and helpful. Like, I think that there's just, you really were. And I think that there's, mutual respect for journalists, and we know how hard our job is. And I felt like a lot of the Greek journalists were so helpful, and they helped me find the right people. And, I would verify different videos and photos with them. So it just took a lot of, you're always trying to verify things as a reporter, but this was like triple the effort. It's like, okay, you said you were friends with Giannis when you were 12. Let me see a picture of you two back then, because anyone can say I'm a friend of Giannis. How do you know? You can't just Google Giannis's childhood friends. That information does not exist. That story hasn't been told.
Yeah, no, nobody other than a book author goes through that fact-checking process.
Right.
And for you were also challenged. It's not like the Antetokounmpos lived in the same house while he grew up and the neighbors were there. So everything was changing. So you were
Right.
following a moving target throughout his childhood.
Right. So many evictions.
Yeah, so many evictions. In fact, that was one of the parts of the book. So I read the book, probably started reading a day after the parade here, which was July 22nd, because it was still, it ended so abruptly and I didn't want to put it off. And so I really savored the book. And there were a couple of things that really, really hit hard. And one was the childhood and the fact that when I met Giannis when he was 18, actually 19, from your book, I learned that just 2 years earlier, they were essentially homeless. They were evicted. They were, and I've covered a lot of athletes like that. I've covered Donald Driver, people who have that story. I knew it wasn't easy for Giannis, but I didn't appreciate how hard it was for the whole family until I read your chapter. And you said that that was the one big thing, that the childhood you told me was unexplored, and we learned so much that you uncovered here. What did you find out, especially in those first 3 or 4 chapters that you did? What really moved you, or what was surprising for you about his early years before he even got to Milwaukee?
Well, I just hadn't been aware of how many times that they had been evicted. And I think it was so interesting to learn of how it would just be all of a sudden that their mom, Veronica, would just say, pack up, we have to go. And, when Giannis's brothers are describing these moments to me, they can't exactly remember how many times because there were so many. And that really just got to me. And I think that's so true with people that have experienced trauma, is you don't necessarily remember the exact details of it, but you remember what it felt like. And they remember the arguments that their parents had with landlords. So it's like details like that just really stuck with me. The other thing I'll say is, I hadn't known about the joy of his childhood because I'm so used to this like trauma narrative, and, oh, he grew up poor and he shared basketball shoes. For me, I made a really intentional effort for every difficult moment you saw in their lives. You're going to have a moment of joy and levity because I think it's hard for people to understand that you can be poor and happy.
Right.
Um, but you absolutely can because that's all you know. And I think he was really happy when he was a kid for a lot of it. There was so much joking with the brothers and going to these upscale beaches and getting in the water. So I loved learning that. I knew nothing about that. You never really saw the joy narratives with him.
I've always wished I could ask Veronica and Charles, how did you do it? How did you raise four young men under those circumstances? Raising one young man is tough. And I think that's what, when you speak to the joy, it comes from that family. Not only the two parents, but those brothers are so tight. After every game in Milwaukee or whatever, you would, especially when everybody was in Milwaukee at the same time, they were they were their own club. And
Yeah.
distinctly, like, you did not belong, you were an outsider. And I'm envious of that. So that's probably, I'm guessing, because that's a big theme in your book too, is how much family means to him.
Yeah, and how much, it's not something where, his parents had to say, be grateful or, you know, um, give it all you've got because these messages were absorbed through action. And Giannis would just see his parents acting in these really selfless, joyous ways, even through the worst adversity, like that they all remember the smile that Charles had all the time. And he had every reason to not smile. So I think that, when you go through a lot of things they went through as a family, you have no choice but to come out of it close. But, I didn't know I knew it was close. We all know it was close, but it's another thing when you learn that like it was uncomfortable for them to sleep in different beds,
Yeah.
like details
Right.
like that once they got older, and that just because you transcend difficult circumstances doesn't mean you leave them behind.
Yeah, I want to come back to that, but there were two parts of your book, two more parts that were tough for me to learn and read. And another one was, I always associated Giannis being very proud to be Greek. He identifies as being Greek. I had no idea how much racism he and his brothers endured. References to monkey noises from people in the stands. Somebody even once called Thanasis an ape or something like that. Was I guess I wanted to know from you, how prevalent was this? Was this like a fringe group where you would, hear it would be, um, I don't even know, skinheads or whatever, but was this fringe, or was this part of their battle, is that they had to fight for acceptance in the country that they came from and lived in?
Yeah, I think it's much more than fringe, but I wouldn't say it's, everyone. I think it's somewhere more in the middle. I think just to kind of give a little context, as you know, there's a real sanitized version of Giannis's story that's been told that omits the racism. It's just not talked about. And it's talked about are the great white people that helped him. And, it's a very fairy tale premise, but that existed. That was true, but there were other truths too. And this book really, shows that they weren't a mere fringe group. Golden Dawn was this is the neo-Nazi group in the book that I mentioned that patrolled the majority migrant neighborhoods like Sepolia. That Giannis and his brothers were very much well aware of. They were at one point the third largest party, like as in political party in the country. So they held seats in parliament. So these aren't people just, violent mobs across the street, like a Charlottesville type of situation. These were like people actually in government. But it wasn't, also to be clear, it wasn't like they left their households and they were terrified upon leaving their house. They felt really secure and really accepted by a lot of people, whether it's classmates, teammates, neighbors. It's just when they went to all white spaces that were opposing teams and opposing cities and in these neighborhoods where they encountered Golden Dawn, that's when you saw the racism come out.
It was really revealing. Okay, so the Bucks are playing right now. They're up, I guess, 57-39, which is good. I saw Chris Middleton has tested positive for COVID. Just want to remind everybody that I am not here to bother Mirin for an hour straight. Please send in good questions for the author, and I would love to get to your questions as well. the third thing that was tough for me to read, just kind of on an emotional human interest level, was the chapter that actually ran in the New York Times. It was the excerpt of your the chapter called Lonely. And again, this is when I first met Giannis, when he was a rookie in Milwaukee. And I would have the coaches would say to me, he really misses his family. And you think, well, yeah, he's really young. But not until I read your book did I understand the depth of, he wondered if he should have even accepted the NBA contract, or how depressed he was. And that season was depressing. We got courtside seats behind the basket, I mean, it was really, there was a draft and a breeze in the Bradley Center. I think that's the year they only won 15 games. And here's Giannis at the end of games. In your book, I learned that he would take his meal and eat it. And then he would, after the other players were gone, he would come back and get more food and somebody had to tell him, Giannis, there's more food. I could feel the loneliness of that poor kid. And I don't know whether or not to give the Bucks credit for holding on to him or his family for coming over. When you wrote that chapter, that is the first time that we get to see him in Milwaukee. What did you learn, or what did you feel was important to convey in that chapter, since you do like to get people to relate to him as a person, as a human being, and not the superstar?
Yeah, I really appreciate this question, because I think that sometimes when athletes come from really difficult circumstances and then all of a sudden they make $1 million, outsiders think, well, shouldn't you be happy? Everything's great now. You have $1 million. And the truth is life gets even more complicated. And so at first when Alex, the youngest brother, told me that Giannis was about to quit and go home if his parents couldn't get the visas, at first I thought, like, is he speaking in, hyperbole? Like, did he really mean that? And then he doubled down. He's like, yeah, like, we really respected him for that. And so I just had no idea, because when I remember watching Giannis as a rookie in the Bucks, all I saw were, funny tweets and happy memes and smoothies. And I just had no idea the depth of the loneliness and the struggle. I also didn't know the Herculean efforts that the Bucks did to get their families over here. I mean, it was rumored to go all the way up to John Kerry, the Secretary of State, because, Herb Kohl, the former owner, has obvious political ties. So there was a whole backstory behind the scenes about, the efforts that it took for the family to get there. And, if they didn't get there, I don't know if Giannis and all of this would have happened, which is so crazy to even think about.
It was so revealing. And listen to you. Do people even know you're not from Wisconsin? Are
I
you?
am
Do you
not from Wisconsin. I'm from Los Angeles. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I became a Bucks fan for a period of time. Like, thank you for welcoming me, but I'm not from here.
You would think you are. You know a lot, but you are. I think you graduated from college in 2013, and you played D3 basketball, right?
Yeah.
And I know you love football and love to cover football. We have that in common too, but you know the game. How much did that help you with writing this book too? Because there's a lot of basketball in here, a lot about the recruiting process and all that. But if people who like to study the game and how it flows and how it got developed, you played it. How much did that help you, your background?
It helped a lot, I think even just like understanding how circuitous his journey was. Like, I know how prospects are found. I know I played in the AAU system in America. Like, I know how this works. And so I saw how completely different this was. And also just little things like, how to run a play, or terminology, or, how bad he was at dribbling at first. And yeah, there is a lot of basketball. I think also it was kind of intentional for me too, to make sure there was enough basketball. I don't know about you when you're covering Giannis, but I think because he's so interesting and so charismatic and his story is so human, whether it's talking about his life or just things in general, it's hard to like fit in basketball sometimes, because he's just so interesting in so many other ways. Like, as amazing as a basketball player as he is, there's just so many other elements, right? So for me, it was like, no, you got to make sure you have the stuff for the hoop heads, because you want to satisfy the grandma that knows nothing about basketball, that wants her grandson to grow up like Giannis, and you want to satisfy the people that are obsessed with analytics and shot selection and blah blah blah.
I thought that I had a different take on the Jason Kidd writings that you had. Probably because I covered Jason Kidd, I knew what he was like. So I guess I wasn't, I mean, you had a lot of great details in there, but I wasn't surprised at any of that. I think people who really followed the Bucks maybe really closely knew that, and maybe 90% of the population didn't. But
That's accurate considering how.
I'll tell you this story. We're allowed as media to come to practice and wait for them to finish up. And then we can go in and while they're shooting free throws, wait for them and interview them. And I can't tell you the number of times that they would say, okay, be here at 1:00. And by 2:30, we're still sitting there waiting. And Jason Kidd, I would complain to the other reporters all the time. I'm like, he is running, and you could hear them screaming and yelling and pushing. This wasn't like just drills or something. They were killing each other. And I told other reporters, I'm like, this is too much, this is March, they're going to be dead. I knew he was a tough coach. And he did in late August, he was asked about some of the things that you had written about, the fact that he didn't give them Christmas off, that he pushed Larry Sanders, that he was a difficult guy. Again, he's the guy who has to be credited somewhat for developing Giannis's all-around game. And Giannis Antetokounmpo even thanked him after his Game 6 post-game press conference. But Jason Kidd said this: it was not Giannis's book. I'm waiting for Giannis when he writes it. It was kind of like his attempt to discredit some of the things that you uncovered. And I had looked to see, do you have a response for that, or have you had a response?
I mean, I never mentioned Jason Kidd because I think a lot of the interview requests that I had were bad faith requests, in the sense of like, they didn't read the book, which had a lot of positives about Jason Kidd in there.
It did.
And I credited him for, developing Giannis in the ways that he did, but also was honest about how, manipulative he could be. And, athletes don't write their own books. I think that's just like not, yeah, I was just like, okay, but you didn't respond to any of the actual content. But, at the end of the day, like, again, if he read it and saw that there was positive in there, like, I don't think he'd necessarily have that response. I think it was, I don't know, it's just disheartening that you put together this really nuanced book that had all of the positives in there, and people want to take like 3 paragraphs and blow it up and ask me about the Mavs. The truth is, like, Jason wasn't a coach when I wrote the book. When I turned the book in, he wasn't a coach, a head coach, I mean. So, yeah.
Yeah, but what, any publicity is good publicity. And like I say, but yeah, that drives me nuts too. Like, did you read anything other than the headline? And when I Googled that topic, a lot of these blog people or whatever literally blew that up, I thought, to be, and I would love to hear eventually, and that brings me to my next question. Have you heard from Giannis since the book has been published?
I haven't. He's had the book for a while now. We sent it to their team before it came out. So I hope they like it.
Yeah. Have you heard from any of the Antetokounmpo family, Thanasis or anybody? So no feedback at all.
I think obviously as big as this book is in my world and my life, it's very minuscule in their lives and their interests and the things that they're doing together, and playing basketball, being focused on that. So as important as it is to me, I don't know if it's as big of a blip in their world as it is in my world.
Well, to be honest too, this is the shortest off season that the NBA has ever had, and any of these guys have ever had. And then Giannis was busy doing a lot of stuff back in Greece, and all this other stuff. He expanded his family. He has 2 children now. So all of that stuff, but the overwhelming reviews that I've gotten from people who have read it, loved the book. What's the feedback that you've gotten just from, people love you on Twitter. I see you're still getting messages to this day about it. What is that, mostly just like very well read, and is it selling well? Is it doing well for you?
Yeah, it's doing well. I think it's comforting for me to hear from like actual people from Milwaukee and Bucks fans that have just been through a lot with this franchise. And, it's just they really enjoyed that there was Milwaukee history in the book and Bucks history, and it wasn't just, cut and bones. He was born, he did this. It was as much about a team story as it was about the individual story. So a lot of the feedback I've been getting has been about that, which is cool. I think it's more about Giannis than it is about me. I think the feedback is just like, wow, he's so inspiring. Like, wow, I knew he had it really rough, but I didn't know that he went through all of this. I love him even more. Like, a lot of the feedback is about Giannis the person, and Giannis like the role model. It's been I obviously know people love Giannis, but this has made me appreciate it on a different level. The reach, people reaching out in different countries. Giannis is my favorite player. I loved learning about him. Somebody in the Philippines, Giannis is my idol. So that's just been really, really cool to see.
Well, that's a reflection on you, right? Because you dug up all those details and did all that research. That's how you get people, hooked on somebody and appreciate them more. Then they become like family and not just that person who's distant. That's what you did with the book. I think I saw, and I don't, this could be wrong. I thought, how many different languages is the book published in now? Because he is a worldwide phenomenon.
Right now, there are multiple, but only the Greek one is available. We have a couple more coming, so that's exciting for sure.
Again, if you guys have questions for Mirin, please let us know. I am almost done with mine and we'd rather hear from you. This is a great opportunity to ask the author directly about her wonderful book that is available anywhere. I just Googled it. You can get it on Kindle. You can buy it in any bookstore here in Wisconsin. You can get it online. Is there any place that you prefer or any place that you really like to shop all the way out there in California or?
Well, I was going to say Skylight, my independent bookstore near me, has personalized and autographed copies. If you want to support, you just write in when you order it, just say you want a personalized message too. And then I just go there and sign it. So I love that place if you want to support. And the audiobook, Lori, I learned Greek.
I saw that.
I learned Greek, you guys. Like I really was not going to do it originally. So, I really came out of my shell a bit and had to do that. So if you guys want to buy the audiobook, that would mean the world.
I love audiobooks. As somebody, I'm in my car all the time, or that's my go-to. How many retakes, it's got to be easier to write than it is. Do you have any TV or radio or broadcast background that helps you with that? No. Okay.
I just go on a million podcasts, but this is like a totally different muscle. Like you almost have to act. Like you do have to act. It is very, because there's very humorous parts about the dialogue, and you have to do it in a way that's not cringy. I hope I wasn't cringy. And it's also like retaking the Greek names. The Golden Dawn leader, oh God, I'm going to butcher it now. Michaloliokis. I did it like 100 times. You'll see slight bits where you're like, oh, her voice is slightly lower. It's because you have to do that 20 million times. So what an experience.
That's awesome, of all the things that you've done already with your career. Well, I have one more question for Mirin, and then I would like to go to audience questions if I could. So you have plenty of time. I believe we're here until 8:00 Central Time. So please get in your questions for her on her awesome book, Giannis, the Improbable Rise of an NBA MVP. Now, I don't know much, but I do know that timing is everything with the book, and you hit the perfect timing. You didn't know that they were going to win the championship. You probably knew they had a pretty good team. They had a really good team in 2019 and 2020, the best record in the league, but both of those ended before they got to the NBA Finals. So a two-part question for me. Was there any pressure to get this thing in so that you knew it could come out this summer if they won the championship, or how did that work? I think you filed everything by March or something. And then the second thing is do you have any more chapters to come now that we know this incredible championship, the first one in 50 years for the Milwaukee Bucks?
Yeah, the idea of them winning a championship was literally not in discussion at all. The reason why, I mean, like literally that was never a thing. And that never came up, not once. None of us,
Not once? Well,
not
come on,
once.
not once?
I'm sorry, I have to be honest, Bucks fans.
Jeez.
Like that was not a thing. We thought they would go deep, but the reason why it came out when it came out and why I only had a year to do it is because we thought he would still be in free agency. And so August 2021 would be like prime time to drop it. And that's why the cover does not have a Bucks uniform, because it would be weird if he left and he was wearing a Bucks uniform. So it's a very neutral cover, less sportsy cover. So yeah, that was not even a thing. I got the deal in March 2020, finished it March, I turned it in March 2021. So all those months leading up to the playoffs, that we just weren't even thinking about that. But obviously things changed. I just finished the epilogue a couple weeks ago, so that there's going to be a brand new chapter epilogue coming in the paperback version March 2022. So that covers everything that happened in that run that I never expected to write, but was nonetheless happy to.
So you must have been pretty happy when he did re-sign with Milwaukee, because it probably made things simpler, or did it not matter?
No, I was thrilled because there was just this gaping hole at the end of the book that I had no idea what to do with. And I was like, you know what, we're going to cross that bridge when we get there. I don't know how to end this book. I'm going to start chronologically. And when he said he was going to stay and then use the word home in his tweet, I was like, home, that's it. That's the last chapter. He's been searching for a home, a literal home, a metaphorical home, a place of belonging, a sense of belonging, racially, basketball, all the belongings, all the homes. So when that happened, I knew how to tie it up. But oh my God, before that happened, I was just like, how am I supposed to end this thing?
Oh my gosh, you have so much talent. That's really impressive. Okay, we have some audience questions, but before we do, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to highlight, or do you want to go right to the readers first?
No, I think you asked everything. That was great.
All right, here are the audience questions. What brought Giannis onto your radar as a potential subject? And this is from Anne in Delafield. And like you said, initially you were interviewing his brother, but obviously I think Giannis dominates a room, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, the moment I think that sold it for me was when I was talking with Alex so they have a basement type room, and Giannis was upstairs and Alex gets a call and he's speaking in Greek with the person. And I asked him when he hung up, I was like, who is that? And he was like, oh, that's my brother. And I was like, oh, which one? There's multiple. He just goes, Giannis. And I'm like, isn't he upstairs? And he's like, yeah, it's my first interview. Like he wants to make sure that I'm doing okay. And I just thought like, exactly. I was just like, this is the most adorable thing in the world. Like, again, if that doesn't say it all about the big brother that he is, like, I don't know what does. So for me, like I had been wanting to do a book. And I think that was the moment where I realized like, okay, this guy, there's just so many layers to him. I think as fascinating as the basketball layers are, the personal ones are even more so. So that's what drew me to him.
Oh, great question. All right. Yes, we have plenty of time. If you are here and you want to ask a question, please throw it in the chat and we would love to ask Mirin, the author, directly about that. Here's the next question. What role has Chris Middleton had in Giannis's life in Milwaukee and as a Buck? And this is from Brenda Spichala. I hope I said that right. Sorry, Brenda. But Chris Middleton, his brother from another mother.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Lori, after I talk, I'd love for you to say something too, because you cover this team in and out. You know these guys in and out way better than I do. He loves Chris, like loves Chris and respects him so much. And the fact that Chris was on that 15-win team with him, they both know what it's like to struggle. And I think there were some interesting parts in my reporting in the book that showed that there was a little bit tension at first as like who was the guy and who was the alpha, but they've both learned that they need each other in very interesting ways, and it's not really about who's the alpha, it's that they're both going to deliver. I think there's nobody prouder of Chris than Giannis when Chris does something well. And I think that Giannis shows his leadership by deferring to Chris when he needs to, when Chris is hot. I think that's leadership. Um, I think it was Sterling Brown, if I'm remembering correctly, from a couple of years ago that was on the team. He told me that like Giannis's biggest growth as a leader is learning to listen to his teammates in a sense, and like it's not always about your iron will to take over the game. It's about like really listening to others. And I think Chris is a prime example of somebody that there's just that mutual listener relationship with Chris. And when Chris has something to say, like Giannis very much amplifies that.
I agree with that very much. Now, I was the fool in 2014 who said, all right, this is Chris Middleton's team. He's ready to go. I'm like, oops, Jason
It could have
Kidd,
been a thing.
he was, Giannis, you just shoot layups, you're fine. But this is Chris. I think what's really interesting about this as well, Brenda, and this is more important, I think, going forward than it is retrospectively, and it is that you'll see Chris confront Giannis on the court, off the court. Chris doesn't need to be center stage. He doesn't need to hold up the championship trophy for the MVP. Even in the post-game interviews when they won the NBA Finals, Chris was up there at the stage talking, and Giannis and his family were all in the back, like loud commotion. Chris brings other people up to the podium to talk with. Like, he just does not need the spotlight. But that guy wants to win. Don't ever mistake that. Their competitive vibe is so compatible. And sometimes you need confrontation on that. You need to tell me when I wrote a crappy story and I got things wrong, whatever it is. Everybody needs that one person to just be brutally honest with them. And I think for Giannis, that has been Chris and always will be Chris, because they just go back for so far. Of course, Thanasis at some point too, but family dynamics even change. But Chris is that guy. And that, to me, I'm even though they've been together 9 years, I'm more curious about what happens in the future between the two of them than I am even what got them to this point. That's a really good question. All right, Mirin. Oh, this is a good one from Tali Kramer. How did you get your start in journalism?
Wow. I started freelancing when I was in college. I went to Occidental College, and it was really hard because in order to be a freelancer, you have to have experience, but you can't get experience if nobody lets you freelance. It's the chicken or the egg, right? So the first thing I ever did was write obituaries for free because
For free.
Because that was the only thing open. Nobody wants to hire a girl with no experience. So that's what, and they weren't even like sports figures, it's just random people in the community. So that's where I got my start. I reached out to over 50, and I did get some more clips from like LA Daily News, a lot of local, SB Nation, Slam Magazine. When I was in college, I reached out to over 50 places that just have the written word and just said, hi, I want to be a sports writer. Can I work for you? And I literally heard back from nobody except one, Orange County Register. And that's where I started my career for the first 4 years.
Oh, that's a great story. Free obituaries. That's criminal. Now I want to know who did that to you. And now I want to know who thought Milwaukee had no shot of winning a championship. We got to talk later. All right. Here's another question. And I don't know who it's from, but a reminder to everybody, you are free to send in questions. We would love for you to ask Mirin directly about her awesome book about Giannis Antetokounmpo that was released in August. Here's a question. How do you think the book would have been different if Giannis had been a free agent?
Oh, man. I mean, I think it would be impossible to get reporting on it. I think it would just be it just wouldn't be as solid. Those things move really very quickly, and they're very intricate, and it's very hard to pin down exactly what happened and stuff like that, which is why I have a ton of respect, for beat writers. Given the publication schedule of a book, I just think it would be an enormous obstacle. Yeah, it would be, and it wouldn't fit in with the narrative, right? That like this guy is in it for the long haul. Like, we love Milwaukee, it just would be a question mark. And it's not that I like to end stories, or in this case, books, with a bow, but I do like some circularity sometimes.
Isn't that the arc? Isn't that the
Yeah,
perfect sort of arc? Yeah.
exactly. So I love how it worked out, obviously.
Awesome. All right. Another question from Katie Masick. I hope I said that right, Katie. I'd just love to hear a little bit more about the reporting process, especially in the middle of a pandemic. How did you find people to talk to? What are some memorable reporting moments? What was it like using video of a foreign country? Any insight on the reporting process would be awesome. Thanks,
Yeah.
Katie.
Yeah, so first, the brothers mentioned this one coach that they had. So that was like the first person I had immediately. And then that guy, when I asked him, I was like, who else do I need to talk to? And he would give me a couple names. And that's sort of how it works with reporting. It's very much leapfrogging. Well, who else played with him? Who lived down his street? And then you get to those people and you interview them, and then you have to verify them. Can you send me photos of you guys as kids, or, rosters of the teams when they were young? And doing it digitally was very interesting because there was a lot of miscommunication. Like when I'm asking about, like, just phrasing things like, could you tell that Giannis's heart was in basketball? Like just phrasing things a little bit differently than you would in English, and saying like, can you think of an anecdote? And then the translator, they were just, what's an anecdote? Like just bits of language barriers. But I absolutely loved it because I think the pride that those people have in their voices when talking about, they're not talking to me because of me. They're talking to me because of Giannis. Like they love this guy so much. And I think it just was about him rather than me. But every day I would wake up at like 5 a.m. and I would start my interviews at 6 a.m. No, I would start my interviews at 6 a.m. because my time in Los Angeles, and then Greek time, it was like morning and night. And so I would literally just report like the whole early morning. And by 10 a.m., I felt like I did a whole day, and I would just be so riveted learning these anecdotes. And I think the most interesting part was like actually learning actual streets that he lived on, and like almost like becoming, I don't want to call it like, I don't want to be ridiculous about it, but like almost like an anthropologist, like what's on that street? Where is it? What's the Google Maps? One example of how nitty gritty the reporting went was the church. If you look on Google Maps, there is a picture of the church, but it actually is the old church. They've redone it. And so it was very confusing. Which church is it? Is it the red one? Is it this one? And having to like really triple confirm that with multiple people and multiple pictures, and then learning they both exist. Now they're just next to each other. It's like little things like that, where if I was in Greece, I could just figure that out ASAP. I'd just be in the church. But pressing for detail. What did the church smell like? I don't know if this detail made it, but it smelled like beeswax or something. Like you really have to be relentless about those details.
Right. And to your point earlier, if I could interject with this, I always take it as a good sign when I'm doing one of my stories. When people return my calls, it says a lot about the person that I'm writing about, whether it's controversial or damning to their character and they want to defend them or whatever it is. The fact that you got a lot of cooperation with that. I did want to ask you about your writing process. So you're a morning writer. I know you like coffee shops.
Yes.
What about, so I have been tortured occasionally with book writing that I've been very poor at. How do you, and then long features, how are you not tempted by social media? Do you turn off the internet? What else is your writing process? Do you have to look at a beautiful ocean to do anything beautiful writing or prose? Or you mention it a lot on Twitter. You also talk about the process, which I think is fascinating. But for you, for this, because you can't just be one and done, you have to revisit it so many times to keep it interesting. What other little things did you have with your writing process?
Yeah. Well, you had me at I've been tortured. I'm like, oh, we are the same person. Literally, I don't know why we do this. It's amazing. This idea of like the perfect writing conditions. that was completely turned on its head with COVID because it was the complete opposite. Couldn't go to my coffee shops. But in general, as the pandemic went on, more stuff was available. But for me, I actually, when the writing isn't working and they say go take a walk, I actually go bake. I love baking. And I find that it's the same concept with walking. You're trying to get out of your brain. And when I am working with the flour and the butter and the dough and I'm kneading it, I'm really into my active sensory, my hands. I'm working with my hands. I'm basically just taking a vacation from my brain. And yes, I'm still thinking about the sentence that's not working, but I'm doing something else which really releases stuff in me. So, yes, I was up in the morning working, but I was also up very late at night working as well and baking and delivering all these things the next day to everyone I know, because I was still working my job at the time Bleacher Report and Ringer. I didn't have book leave. So I was working at all hours of the day. But I think I love coffee shops. The vibe, just being there around other people, but not talking to other people. I'm really not a social media person. I don't have Instagram. The only time I check Twitter, the only time I say something once a day and then you're good. Cause we have to be on it, whatever. I'll just say one thing about writing and the craft, and then I don't look at it, it's just very stupid. So for me, I'm able to block it out because I have to be focused. This stuff is hard, writing a book you're not just putting words on a page, you're trying to reveal an aspect or aspects about a human being that is very known. And people who are reading it, some of them know everything there is to know about this guy. So you have this enormous challenge of telling them things they don't know in a super interesting way.
Right.
That's hard.
And likewise, it's part of both of your legacies, both his and yours. 100 years from now, that book will be available and it's part of history. So that's if you really go deep with the thinking of it, that's when I freeze up. I'm like, I don't make the bakery, but I will eat the bakery. And so, okay.
That's right.
Thank you so much, audience, for your questions. We're going to keep going with some of the questions here, but you still have time to get some more in if you want to. Here's another question for you, Mirin. Can you, and I love this idea. I didn't send in this question. Can you talk about what ideas you have for a second book? And I would say third or fourth. You're just a full-time author now, right? A real author?
Oh my God, I hope so. Let's all cross our fingers and toes and manifest this. It's funny, I had a part of the challenge of doing a book on a current player is that other people are afraid to talk about that player because they were afraid it would be tampering. So it gave me real perspective about do I want to do another current player? It was just happenstance. He was approaching his supermax, which made it even more difficult. But do I want the red tape of a current player? Do I want a retired player? So I was thinking more retired for the next book. I had a meeting with an agent of a retired guy that I'm very interested in. But I don't know if it'll happen. It's not from a story I did before like this one. So I'm not sure if that's the one. Yesterday, I had a totally different idea, a non-basketball idea, and I'm kind of really excited about it. But again, do I want to stick with hoops? These are all things that I'm trying to think about and trying to remind myself that books are not something to rush. You are stuck with this thing for a year or more. If you don't love it, if you're not passionate about it, it's going to be miserable. So I need to make sure that the subject and their team and everything, all the things that need to be in place are in place.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's another question. I don't know who it's from, but I'll just read it. It's related. Who is your dream subject, current or past?
God.
That you can speak of.
Oh God, current or past? I mean, I know this sounds like a downer, but I really would give anything to write a book on Vanessa Bryant right now. I really would. or Gigi. You know, I wrote a profile on Gigi Bryant immediately after her death, and that just moved me. And she's gonna do a book at some point. It would just be so important. It wouldn't be pleasurable, obviously, but it would be so important. The other person I would die to write a book on is Naomi Osaka. I
Yes.
would just do everything. I mean, I have been chasing that long form story for like 2 years now.
Really?
So maybe all the chasing will pay off at some point.
Right. Oh, that's sometimes people need time though before they can come
Yeah,
around and talk about,
exactly.
as you understand, which is why you'd be really good for that.
Exactly. Stories, you couldn't have said it better. I mean, sometimes they're just not ready to be told.
Yeah, right. They're right. And you need enough healing to be able to talk about it. Yeah. So here's another question. I was going to say too, what do you bake when you need that reset? Greek.
Oh my God.
I don't even, what's the.
I am so excited for this question. Whoever.
Because you're speaking a foreign language to me. I don't cook at all. So please.
Oh my God, I love baking so much. I'm a lemon poppy person. I made lemon poppy scones yesterday. I love anything lemon, anything poppy. I do love biscottis because I drink so much coffee. They're like a perfect coffee. And if you look on New York Times Cooking, there's this recipe called cocoa cornmeal biscottis by Dory Greenspan, my fave baker. Oh my God, I can't tell you how many cocoa cornmeal biscottis I whipped up in the pandemic, but that is my all-time favorite.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a great answer. This is so lame, but I get my ideas actually when I'm cleaning. Like, and usually it's the bathroom, when you're like elbow into cleaning a toilet bowl. I'm like, I should do a story on that person, but baking is just stress to me. Like nobody talks.
Yeah, I think I'm the only person that de-stresses by following an exact recipe.
But you probably, the smells and everything is probably great. Okay. All right. Here's another question. Thank you for these questions. We do have time, like about 10 minutes left if you want to get any more questions in for Mirin. Here's one. Have either of you ever been to a basketball game in Greece? If not, I recommend that you both go. I attended a game for Panathinaikos, I can't even pronounce it to this day, when I was living in Athens. I'm sorry for that mispronunciation. And working as a school librarian at an international school. It was insane. So it was one of the Greek games. All right. So you didn't make it over to any games, right?
No, but I hear that there are like stabbings and flares being thrown. And I mean, it sounds like absolutely insane. How
do you pronounce the word that I mispronounce? And I see it all the time, and I've been too lazy. Panathinaikos.
Panathinaikos. The only reason I know this is because of I had a Greek speech coach, and it was 8 hours a day of me turning so red, being like, I suck so much at this pronunciation.
It's so well. Oh my, can you say it one more time? I got to practice this.
Panathinaikos.
That's awesome. We want to go. We should go to a game over there. It's my dream to go over there. It's my dream.
Call me if you go.
Okay, I will. I really will. Okay, here's another question. What was the most unexpected thing you learned during your writing of this book that wasn't about Giannis? That's a great question.
I had no idea that there were, well, it's technically about him, but I had no idea that there were current murals of him being desecrated. I had no idea of the current day racism. That was incredibly shocking to me. And that there's literal people in parliament calling him the N-word. I had no, to this day, I had no idea. I thought this was childhood racism. I didn't know it was current. The other thing was I didn't know much about the history of the Bucks, obviously, but little things like that priests played basketball all the time at the old practice, the Cousin Center, and interviewing the priests was some of my favorite moments of reporting this book. That is just so cool. And those priests lived for those games. I mean, they felt so amazing. And John Hammond, the former Bucks GM, made them feel so at home. He would hand them t-shirts, Bucks gear. Such a heartwarming story,
The Cousin Center just was a part of our community. It's part of, everybody knows where it is, not everybody's allowed in, but there's basketball camps there. You could take your kids and stuff like that, and you would see people playing all the time at all hours. So that was a great part of your book. That was really fun. Let's see. What else? Oh, I know. Okay, the Bucks lead 90. Thanks, Connor. To not have the game on. The Bucks are beating Detroit 90-62 with 11 minutes left. I had another question as well. I was really impressed with how many teammates you got to talk to you and other people, past and current, from Greece in the NBA. Access, people don't understand, I don't think, how hard it is to chase someone down. You don't have everybody's phone number usually. The reporters who do have those phone numbers usually consider it proprietary information, so they're not going to give it out because that's their scoop. So you either have to go through the team's public relations or the agents or both, or you have to try to meet up with them. That was a lot of groundwork for you to get those big names. How did that go for you? Did you have to say, hey, so-and-so talk to me, will you also talk to me? Did you have to just be relentless? I know you're very good with pursuit and perseverance, but can you talk to me a little bit about how you got so many people who are so close to him that way to talk to you?
Yeah, it's exactly the pursuit. Like it was like 7 months of like just following up, just following up, just following up. And it's, and I definitely use I've talked to this person, I've talked to this person, and that really helped. But you're right, it's so hard. I think what was good was that the world shut down. There was like about a week stretch where right before the world shut down, and I went to Milwaukee to interview the brothers again, and I went to a game, and I just like literally beelined any player I could in the locker room. And then I traveled from Milwaukee to Sacramento because the Kings were playing the Pistons, and there's like 4 former guys on the Pistons that were on the Bucks. And you might say like, wow, like, $300, $400 trip just to get 4 guys. And it's like, yeah, fuck, sorry. Like, yeah, like, let's go.
Huge. I mean,
That's huge. You got to do what you got to do, and you got to hustle. And so, I went to that game like 5 hours early, and, it became a running joke, like, who are you waiting for? And I was like, here's my list. I need this person, that person. And it's because I just was relentless about showing up, and it wasn't even guaranteed that I'd get to talk to them. But I just kept showing up. And, some of my best interviews, even for non-NBA stars, some of just his best friends came after like almost a year of reaching out. Like Raman Rana, one of his best childhood friends, that happened like a month before deadline. Like it was just following it. Like, you have no idea like how why somebody doesn't want to talk, or sometimes it just, I'm applying for colleges and I don't want to have my name in it. It just has like a million reasons. And so it's just about being really relentless with it.
And sometimes, a lot of times with me, they want to get permission from the subject.
Oh yeah, then they want to ask like, yeah,
oh, Giannis, can I talk to Mirin about you or whatever, and gonna wait, or yeah, I think that's a big part of it as well. We're getting very close to wrapping up here, but we do have one very important question. You said you were in LA, so Clippers or Lakers?
Lakers. Okay, not even a question. When everyone started becoming Clippers fans, I was like, where were you in the Darius Miles, Lamar Odom era? Like, were you even aware of this team? Yeah, Lakers. I do have a Lakers story coming up, which I'm really excited about. Hometown, my mom is the biggest Laker fan alive, so
yeah. Well, if I could, I'd like to end with one question, because it's always important to think about the next generation of journalists and authors. And, it's very hard to get into this business, but there are people already in high school and in college who are majoring in this or pursuing this career. And as you know, starting out writing those obituaries for free, it is not the glamorous job that a lot of people think it is. A lot of times you have to be impartial and not a fan of who you cover, at least in my position. I wondered, rather than saying, what advice would you give to somebody to get started? I guess, what advice would you give to somebody who has been rejected 20 times, 30 times, hasn't gotten that door opened for them yet, and is thinking, maybe I should do something else? Because to me, that's always the breaking point, the weeding out process for young journalists, is when they find some resistance and very tough to get into this business. What would you suggest for somebody young trying to break through?
Yeah. Oh man, I love this question because, like 4 years ago, I was writing about Little League at the Orange County Register and like feeling so pathetic about myself and like my chances. And I was doing the most unsexy work ever. And then I got laid off and I was like, I'm the only woman here. I make the least money. Now I don't even have a job. Like it was so horrible. And that was almost a breaking point for me. And I think what allowed me to not give up and what I hope allows other people to not give up is just um, something a mentor said to me, like really made me feel better in a weird way. She said, nobody goes through this industry unscathed. So just because it's happening to you early doesn't mean that means you don't have a career. It just means that this happened to you right now and it's setting you up for something so much bigger. Like if you would have told me when I lost my job that I would write a book on Giannis, I would just be like, okay, I like that you're dreaming big, but okay. It's that it's like careers aren't built in 3 months, 6 months. I spent 4 years at the Register writing stories nobody read except my parents. And, I felt really, really lost being a full-time freelancer after that for, Bleacher Report and a couple other places. And then it changed. And so I would just remind you, it can change instantly. LaMelo Ball happened to be going to Lithuania. I did a freelance piece on Lonzo. They said, why don't you go? And it was the opportunity of my life. It changed everything. I got a job after that. So I would just say you might feel super hopeless right now and you might feel like there's no path for you and you're seeing all your friends advance. This is what happened to me, and they're at ESPN and they're at SI and they're doing all this cool stuff and you're so uncool and blah blah blah. But like it could change just like that. You could get your dream assignment and you just have to be ready. And so instead of focusing on the fact that you're not where you want to be, focus on being so ready and so practiced that when you get your opportunity, you know what to do.
And be prepared to ask almost 300 sources to get the story that you need. Bottom line.
Be prepared for a global pandemic in your first book on the most famous person alive, and good luck.
And be prepared to work. There's no substitute for it. What a treat to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for talking to Wisconsin about this book. This is very meaningful to a lot of us here. A lot of people remember the first championship in 1971. A lot of us thought we'd never see it in our lifetime. And then to have Giannis from Greece kind of be our adopted son, our adopted brother, you really captured him very well. So thank you very much. And thank you, Connor. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Lori, thank you so much. And can I just say how lucky our Wisconsin folks to have you covering this team? I mean, you're amazing. So thank you for this. Thanks, Connor.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Lori, for your questions. And Mirin, thank you for this book. Thank you for capturing lightning in a bottle for all of us. It was, it's a great thing to be able to talk about. And I also want to say thank you to the estate of Cheryl Rosen Weston. That's where we get the money to provide free books to readers. It was really her passion, so please don't hesitate. If you want to copy this book, click the green button, get one for yourself, get one. Supply chains are real and holidays are coming up, so get this for the basketball lover in your life. The Bucks are up 105-70 the last time I checked here. 7 minutes in the fourth quarter. Lori, you're gonna be fine. It's gonna work out for you tonight. Yeah. I didn't check the Lakers score. I don't even know if they're playing here. And I'm sorry. My brother lives in LA, so you can text him.
There you go.
He'll let you know.
They're still having dinner.
There you go. Yeah, she's still at work for sure. Well, thank you so much. This was a lovely way to spend the evening. And for those of you watching at home, thank you for joining us. And you can go catch the last 7 minutes of the Bucks game. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks.